Hi, gang. It's Hexy. This is Hexy that's been sick for a couple days now. But imagine this, I'm playing something on the East Front. It's another game that came from my buddy Rich up in Michigan. This is 3W 1993 designer Masahiro Yamazaki. Recognize that name. Uh, so I played Eric Goldberg's, the Kursky game. And this is a Masahiro sort of design in his designer notes talks about how he picked stuff from that game and applied it to this game. Maybe the morale or something like that. But this is really just the bum rush of the Germans in Army Group Center, the opening stages of Barbarossa. The game is only 7 days. So, but as you can see, much like the other game that I played, you've got modes that get assigned to the corps, all right? And of course the corps, there's 4 armies here. Well, 2 panzer groups and 2 armies, but the panzer groups qualify as corps in this group. You got panzer group 3 and 2. So who was that? Was that Hoth and Guderian, or I know Guderian's one of them. And then the Russians, of course, they're spatters of frontline units they've got spread all over the place. Now, the Russians all started either in prepared offense or mobile offense because I don't know why, but I want to say that the Russians were actually considering an offensive. Yeah, I don't know. They moved to the front lines here where they were at in Poland, the ground they took in Poland. And all these units they're all deployed at the start of this game in an offensive mode. And all the corps headquarters that are up here start the game disordered. So there's not going to be any mode change until the PM turn. The game is broken down into 2 turns per day, an AM and a PM. And of course, as per standard early East Front, the Germans get the priorities on everything, and they get the advantage pretty much on everything. Aircraft, well, the Russian aircraft start reduced step, and now all they got left is this one unit because the Germans have eliminated everything else they had because, of course, which was legitimate anyhow because the Germans went in and shot up everything they had on the airfield, so the Russians only had minimal stuff to start with. Now, the interesting part of this is, I had to wrap my head around, excuse the cough, I'm sorry, is the movement factors are not very potent in this game. Like if you've got an infantry unit and they're under prepared offensive mode, the prepared offensive mode, and I'll explain the counters to you, there's like 6 different versions, operational modes, is their casualty value, their morale modifier, and then their movement allowance. So a foot troop, infantry, let's say leg infantry, they have a movement of, when their corps in prepared offensive mode, they have a movement allowance of 4. Well, infantry to move through a clear hex takes 2. So these guys aren't going very far when they move. So you've got to get these guys, if you want to use the road benefits in this game, you've got to get these guys into travel mode, and then they can use, like motorized can use the roads at a half movement point per hex, and foot can move it at 1 movement point per hex. The one thing in this game that confuses me is the railroads, because it costs to use the railroads for motorized for a double track when they're in travel mode, or a transfer mode they call it. It costs them 2 movement points to move on a railroad, and it costs infantry 1. Excuse me. So I don't know how. I'm not sure what they were thinking about railroads. Are they not using the railroads are they not putting troops on trains and moving them? Because something's not right. And I can't find, maybe I'm missing in the rules. Maybe I need to look up errata. Hexy, I'm bad about finding errata and adding it to the games. And I'm going to say that this one, at least for rail movement, probably does have some errata. Maybe it explains that. I don't know. If somebody else out there knows, let me know. All right, so all the little white squares on the map are victory locations, and they have points underneath them, i.e. like this one right here has 3. And a lot of them are at bridge crossings, river crossings, where if the Germans take them, they're going to get points for that. And the Russians can blow them. But you can only blow bridges when you're in what's called a withdrawal mode, which is a WD mode. I don't have anybody in a WD mode yet. And you can't just decide all right, this unit's going to change to this mode. You have to roll a dice on a chart to figure out if they successfully can change to that mode. So that's not that easy. Trying to get Russians to the front. They're spread out all over the place. Russians up there are trying to move up here to the front. All right, got them down here trying to get into blocking positions. I don't forecast the Russians being able to check this. You've got Minsk sitting way back here, back up here right here in this area. So that's a prime objective. It's got a bunch of victory locations in it. You got Vilnius up at the top of the map up there. Okay. Borisov, which I just saw Hudson playing the East Front Series sort of training scenario. All right. And then you got Babrusk over here. And a town down here that you can't even get to because the roads come straight across the map. And there's no victory points on it either. It doesn't matter. But I don't know why I get the feeling that this game may have been have the ability to connect with other maps to other game, or maybe that was the intention. But because you've got a fortified area down here, but it's probably never going to get used. Like I say, 7 turns, so 14 turns altogether. And it's just a race for the Germans. And you can already see up top here, you've got 3 Panzer Corps up here. 3 Panzer Corps that are, you got the 46th, 57th, and the 39th. And they're just already, I mean, they're getting ready to punch through. I had to redirect a lot of Russians to this area up here. And you have breakdown units here too. And what happens is during the game is you lose division-type units, not reserve, not independent. The morale table, which you can see right here, starts to decrease. I've already had the 4th Army. They've already lost a couple units. They started at a morale of 6. They're already down now to 4. And how that affects the game is units, when they take losses in combat or get retreated or whatever, they do a check. And one of the checks they do is they do a casualty loss check, and then they do a morale check to see if they become disordered and retreat. So it's not just you roll on a dice and you get a number. You roll on the combat results table and you get a number, and then that number is how many steps they lose. That number is added to a roll to check for casualty loss. Now, units on the board might have a strength here of this infantry unit. His strength is 4, the first number there, okay? And he might go to take a loss, and you would roll a casualty check against whatever mode his corps is in. So the 47th R, pull their chip, they're in mobile offensive mode. So his casualty value is a 5. Get over there. All right. So you would roll against that 5. If you roll equal to or less than, he's good to go. He doesn't take the casualty loss. And then that's where all your modifiers from your combat results table come in. You might have like a 3. So you roll a dice and add 3 to the dice. And then you also have, on that same roll, they got to roll against the morale. Well, if their corps morale or their army morale is 6, and you're going to add 1 to that morale roll, so if you roll a 6 on the dice, that 6 is now a 7. Now he's going to get he's going to fail morale, and he's going to end up disordered or disrupted and retreating, or And if you treat obviously in the zones of control, you're going to lose step. And most of these units are only 2-step units, other than the big combat units. Like the Germans are their strengths of 6. Like a lot of other games, you'll put a minus marker. When they take a loss, and you don't take multiple losses, like say, unless you retreat through zones of control. So you have these markers here, -1, -2, to handle the steps, and you got to check those when you're doing combat for their strength, because this is a differential. It's not a ratio. So if you have 6 strength points attacking 2 strength points, it's a differential of +4 for the attacker, and then you have modifiers for terrain and mode. Whether there's mixed units from different armies in the same hex, whether somebody is disordered or disrupted in that hex, the terrain they're in, terrain they're behind. And then the air power, it's interesting, because I was expecting these aircraft, these Stukas and stuff, to cause damage or to be able to add them to the attacks. It's not how they work. They go into ground assault, and then you have air-to-air combat are the first 2 numbers. The first number is attack, second number is air defense. And then the third number is a interdiction bombardment, and then the bottom right number is their range. Okay, so when you go into combat, every air unit gets to attack. Even if they get shot down, they still get the chance to fire before they're removed. So if you have a German unit goes first and he engages a Russian group and he causes that group to abort, or the group takes a hit, that Soviet or Russian air group they get to do their firing first before you abort them, or they suffer their loss. And anybody that survives, if they're still surviving after the first round of air superiority combat, they go again at it until either one side units are all eliminated, or you go through 5 rounds. Then any remaining aircraft after that, they can go in and interdict the ground assault air units that are put on the map. Now, what do those guys do? Well, they provide an interdiction with that range they've got. And anybody moving into it's going to pay a penalty, okay? And if you if you have to perform a casualty check or a strength check within that, you're going to have to add that modifier, that dice roll modifier for interdiction or barrage, to that dice roll if you're within that interdiction range. Now, right now, the weather is overcast -2, so this guy's range is only in his hex right now. This guy up here is still only in his hex. This guy down here is only in his hex. So, I got one guy way up top here. He's got a range of 4, so he's got a 2 hex range right now. So I thought that was interesting how these aircraft don't actually get involved going into attacks, at least not that I've read, and like maybe change the strength of the attack or do a column shift for adding air support to the combat. And if I remember right, I don't think the German Air Force was doing it. The Luftwaffe was doing that anyhow. They were out busy tearing up airfields to make sure the Russians got no aircraft up in the air, which doesn't sound to me like it would have mattered too much anyhow with the type of aircraft they had in 41. So, all right, so here you go. We are 2 turns, just finished up 2 turns, and 12 more to go. Doesn't take real long to play. Your biggest thing here in this game is thinking about when you go to change orders for your units, having to roll dice or having to decide, geez, what mode do I want them? Because you don't want a unit caught in transfer mode when they're close to the enemy. You want to get them out of that mode. But like I say, you got to roll a dice to get them out of that. And the headquarters cannot be disordered. And everybody has to be within communication to be affected. So the communication in this game it's like 6 hexes for the Germans to a headquarters and 4 hexes for a Soviet combat unit to its headquarters. And your breakdown units, you have charts over here where you put the main unit on the breakdown chart, and then you have corresponding counters that go with A, B, C, D, E, and you put them on the map. So it's kind of like, I remember playing like Wacht am Rhein, where you could break down the infantry battalions into companies and put 3 different units on the board. And that's how similar to this, okay? So there you have it, Army Group Center from Masahiro Yamazaki back in 1993, a 3W game. And this covers June 22 to June 28, 1941. Let's get this up so you can see Hexy messing around on the East Front some more. All right, talk to you soon.